Good day. I'm Lieutenant General Gordon Reay, Commander of Canada's Army. And I'd like to take a few moments today to talk to you about the general state of your Army. These have been very challenging times for all of us. Since Christmas, we have had a new defense policy, and of course, earlier this spring, the 95 budget. Added to that have been the controversies associated with the videos of Somalia, and indeed, those controversies have played themselves out in Canada's media. I thought that I would take a few moments today to clear the air and to describe for you the fact that your Army is as strong and as healthy as it has ever been. Let me begin, for example, with questions concerning morale. We have all seen in our media and on television accounts of concerns on the part of our junior ranks. But what is important to realize is that what we have been reading and seeing on television are the results of studies commissioned by we, the leaders. As professionals, we have a moral responsibility to be fully aware of the concerns of our young men and women and to determine how best to find solutions. In coming to grips with this problem, we realize that there are two levels of solutions. There are the short-term ones. What are the issues we could do right now to alleviate particularly the fiscal situations facing our soldiers? But more importantly, what are the longer-term issues that we can come to grips with? And within the Army, as an example, we have commissioned a quality of life study to determine what are the standards, what are the norms, what are the basic qualities that we should regard as a bare minimum for the soldiers of the 21st century. And indeed, it is your leaders that are fully engaged in this process. And that leads me then to a brief discussion on the quality of leadership. I believe, speaking very candidly to all of you, that the quality of leadership in the Canadian Armed Forces and the land forces in particular today is as good and indeed better than it ever has been. And let me offer 4 reasons for stating that opinion. First, we have coped in our armed forces with more sociological change in the last decade than we have had to endure in our entire history. And we have coped with those changes extremely well. Military forces are innately conservative. We tend to follow society in terms of sociological trends rather than lead. Yet in these cases, with access to information, with the Privacy Act, with all of the ramifications of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, this conservative force has coped with those changes very, very well. Secondly, we have had to cope with more drastic cuts in budget in recent years than has been the case in Canada's armed forces at any time since demobilization at the end of the Second World War. And change of that magnitude is very unsettling. Yet again, the land forces of Canada have coped with these changes extremely well. Thirdly, let me simply list some generals and some NCOs for you. General Dallaire, General Toussignan, General Crabb, General McGuinness, General Gaudreau, General Mackenzie, General Roy, to name but a few. Every one of those generals has commanded United Nations forces with distinction in the last 3 or 4 years. And it was Canada's Army that trained and developed those leaders. It was also Canada's Army that trained and developed the sergeants Hoppe, Stevenson, and Forrest, amongst others, all decorated recently for actions overseas. And fourthly, how soon we forget the tough and disciplined soldiers we all watched on television during the Oka crisis. And as well, there have been over 340 units from 32 countries serve in the former Yugoslavia. And in all that time, the United Nations force commander there has only ever awarded 3 unit citations, and 2 of those 3 have been to Canadian units. So collectively, examining those 4 issues, I think that tells you that Canada's leadership, NCOs and officers, is pretty solid. Let me turn now briefly to our new defense policy and the results of the recent federal budget. We now have a new defense policy that sets us on a new course. And perhaps the most important aspect of that defense policy is the clear recognition of the government of this country that we must retain a general purpose combat capability. And that has been endorsed in ringing terms in the recent white paper. The budget, of course, is a tough budget. It is a tough budget for all Canadians as well as to the armed forces. Clearly, the government had to get its fiscal house in order, and the Department of National Defense had to play a very important role in helping to bring that about. But in the course of bringing down the budget, the government also recognized the burden the Army is carrying these days. Literally within the last few weeks, we hit a figure of 20,000 soldiers that have served overseas in the former Yugoslavia alone in the last 5 years. And of those 20,000, 4,000 have been reservists. The budget gives to the land forces an increase of 3,000, and virtually all of those 3,000 positions are going to the field force. What I've done in conjunction with the recent decisions concerning the disbandment of the Airborne Regiment have been to broaden the base of our field force by bringing into being 3 new light infantry battalions. These battalions, to be located in Petawawa, Valcartier, and Edmonton, will bring our rotation base to 15 units. But that's not all. Within the increase, I will also be adding squadrons to every armored regiment, batteries to every artillery regiment, additional troops and subunits to all the other units of my field force, the engineers, the field ambulance, the service battalions, and the military police platoons. And the result of this will be a more capable, more broadly based field force of the Army, still capable of taking on the full range of options a government would wish its armed forces to endure. By the same token, we have had to take our cuts in budget in other areas of the land force, and these will not be easy to accomplish. I'm having to close some bases. Calgary and Chilliwack are perhaps the ones of the most concern, but we must also complete the closure of Toronto and London. We must close Jericho Beach as well, and we're going to consolidate the Montreal garrisons by the closing of Saint-Hubert. The day-to-day running costs of the Army as well, our support costs, are going to be reduced. And this is going to require us all to look at issues through new glasses, to look at them more imaginatively with innovation. And to aid in this process, we intend to re-examine just how we do business and at what levels we do business. Our aim here is to put decision-making and empowerment at the lowest level that makes practical sense, so that unit commanding officers and base commanders will have more authority locally to make fiscal decisions that make sense for their local circumstance. The white paper also has things to say about land force equipment. It is important to note that the white paper advocates fully the introduction of a new fleet of armored personnel carriers into Canada's land forces as early as possible. And we're expecting announcements as to the nature of that new APC literally any day now. And this is very, very important for a land force that's using its equipment at almost a record rate. Equally, other equipments are coming into service at the end of this year and in early 1996. A new reconnaissance vehicle for the Armored Corps, the new family of combat net radios, which will be the most modern combat net radios on the planet today. We're also introducing modern wargaming techniques into our divisional headquarters and staff college. We've already taken delivery of the first 2 or 3 of 100 new helicopters for the Army. And later this year in Kingston, we will be opening our technical staff college. So the effects of all of this, the 3,000 increase to the land force, particularly in the field, and the new equipment coming about, is going to bring about a truly general-purpose combat-capable Army. But it goes much beyond simply equipment and dollars. It depends ultimately on the caliber and quality of the Canadian soldier. And let me assure you all, from my perspective, biased as it may be, and taken as a result of also traveling a great deal in talking to you and in talking to the armies of our NATO partners and our coalition partners, that I can state clearly and unequivocally that I have the very great privilege of commanding the very best soldiers in the world, led by the very best NCOs and officers. Thank you for the opportunity to talk to you today. I hope that I've left an impression with you that the land force of today is a pretty capable, well-led, very solid land force. And that we're also one Army, and that the integration of regulars and reserves shown every day in the battlefields of Yugoslavia is now a reality. That I've also shown to you today that with the changes in the budget, tough as they are, they will have the effect of reinforcing a general-purpose combat-capable land force, one with a larger field force, one with new equipment coming in, and one prepared to accept innovation and imagination in how we go about doing our business. It's an Army I'm very proud to lead. And it's an Army that I will have the great privilege of continuing to lead for another year or so. That will allow me an opportunity to bring even more of these factors to fruition, and it will give you an opportunity to keep your eyes and ears on me and ensure that the kinds of initiatives that I'm talking about today really do come to fruition, and that we do it together as a team, an effective team, the best Army on the planet. Thank you.